Hello and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show.
Welcome to one of the internet's best podcasts, where we dive deep into the lives of the extraordinary and fascinating people who leave an indelible mark on our world. Join us as we explore their captivating stories, remarkable achievements, and unique perspectives that shape history and inspire generations. Get ready to embark on a journey through the lives of inspiring people unlike any other.
Hello, folks, and welcome to the show. My name is indeed Avrum Rosensweig, and I'm delighted to be here. And I'm very deeply honored that you are watching and or listening. Life can be very challenging for all of us. You know what they say that none of us can get away, with an entirely peaceful life. We are often called upon to be courageous and brave. And it is those times in our lives which we sit back very often and go, how is this happening to me? Why do I have to go through this? This is very harrowing. This is very difficult. I wasn't prepared for this. There's no manuals on these difficulties. But the truth of the matter is, there's an old saying is the cracks are where the light shines in. And indeed, that is the case. The meaning behind that saying is that it is those challenging things, it is those difficulties that we learn from. It's the blues in life, right? You hear so often from people who are successful, it's not the stuff that was easy that I learned from. It was the difficult things. It was the challenging things. It was the branch that I tripped over, on that metaphoric street. Today, we're going to talk to somebody who's extremely brave, who's extremely courageous. Her name is Rivky Stein. Let me welcome her to the show. How are you, Rivky?
I'm well. Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on your show today.
It's an honor to have you. It's an honor to have you. I want to tell you a little bit about Rivky's story. I'm going to give a disclaimer to the show prior, and I think it's important that we do that. The views expressed in this podcast are solely those of my guests and do not necessarily reflect myself or any affiliate organizations or otherwise. This content is for your edification. Some of it might be a little bit challenging. I would say this is not a show for children. Today, we'll talk about a very painful story, but also a very beautiful one, and that is the story of Rivky Stein. She is a young woman who made national news after exposing years of abuse, through whom we will call Mr. X, and the shocking inaction of the religious and legal system. Her case raises very, very significant questions. How do abusers manipulate institutions to maintain control? Why do survivors so often struggle to find justice? And what happens when speaking out makes you a target? So this is with Rivky, and this is her way of coming out to tell her story about the difficulties that she's gone through with Mr. X, through Mr. X and his actions. But it is also to tell you about some of the tremendous things that she has done in her life, despite the fact that the challenges have been so great. So let's get into this interview. Once again, I welcome my guest, Rivky Stein, and I thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
All right, so let's start in the beginning. Tell us where you were born.
I was born here born in New York. I grew up in foster care for a large portion of my life. I was given back to my parents at some point after foster care. My father, who was actually a lawyer, was extremely physically and psychologically abusive to me, to my mother, my siblings, and meaning me and my siblings, had gone off to more foster care systems after going back to my parents for a period of time. So most of my childhood was growing up in different foster homes.
Now, initially, when you were sent off to a foster home, because your home life with your parents was just too abusive, too scary, you weren't meant to be there with your other siblings. You actually ended up in a foster home in the beginning, which you quite liked, correct?
That would be my first foster home as a child. I did like very much, yes. The entire, story of my foster care, I can delve into at another time. But for now, to just touch on it, I didn't think much of it. I liked my first foster family. They made me feel safe. It was, being uprooted from that foster home to go to another one, um, which was, quite, you know, traumatizing, I guess, for me at that time. Um, as well as, the difference of lifestyles of each foster home. For example, going from an extremely modern family to an extremely Hasidic family, which I had later found out that was done from my father. My father had pushed to take me out of this foster home that I was very happy in,
Yeah.
and put me in this Hasidic foster home at the time.
So explain to us, for my listeners and viewers who don't know what a Hasidic home is, tell us what the environment was like.
Well, when I got there, they right away took away my pants, my shorts. They told me I have to only wear skirts. They chopped off my long, beautiful hair and cut it like up to hair here, like my chin. I was traumatized at that. I recall being in that foster care with my one brother who, prior to them allowing me to see him, they said, uh, you're going to see him look different. And whatever you do, just tell him that he looks great. They brought him in and he had this Hasidic haircut where they made him like this long payas and they shaved his head. I was again traumatized. I couldn't believe that this was my brother, and the entire experience at this specific foster home was quite negative. A lot of, psychological abuse and a lot of negativity around that specific foster home for me.
Now, you come from a family of 7 children. Your mom had those 7 children in eight years, right?
Correct.
What comes to mind as we dive into your life is that as a little child, you were exposed to such great difficulties, the things that children should not be exposed to, right? Do you remember how you coped with some of those challenges?
You know, for me, growing up as, this kind of being my life, I didn't really think much of it. I was a pretty happy go lucky kid in general. I always tried to just make the best of everything. I always tried to look for the good in everything as well
Mhm.
as the good in everyone. Um, I pretty much went about it that way. Um, I was just, I just found a lot of love and happiness in the smallest of things at times.
Are you still like that today?
Yes, I would say so.
Which is probably one of your saving graces, right?
Perhaps.
What's interesting about your young life is that eventually, after being in these foster homes, you were returned to your parents. And I remember, as you told me, that your foster parents said you're going to go visit your parents, these people, and either you'll come back and we're going to adopt you, or you're going to stay there and you're going to be with your mom and dad, right?
Correct.
Which to me is a crazy thing for a kid to hear. Like you didn't know where you were coming or going.
Oh, correct. Yes. I was I was like terrified, honestly, that if I would be adopted by this specific family. As I had mentioned, it was a very negative place, a lot of psychological abuse to me. Um, and I was terrified if I would be adopted by them at that time. That's the only thing that really went through my mind at that
So
age.
so you go back and you're with your mom and dad, right? And I think it's fair to say, tell me if I'm being accurate here, your mom is a good woman. She's still with us, right? You love her dearly. She has gone through her own abuse, uh,
Absolutely.
but your dad was not such a great guy, right?
That's correct. And what's interesting is when I was in foster care, we would have visits like about once a week.
Yeah.
And the visits would consist of me only seeing my father for that span of time. Only towards the end of this like kind of like transferring out of the foster care to my parents, this woman had come into this visit and she held me on her lap and said to me, you know, and I said, "Who are you?" And she said, "I'm your mother."
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, right." I'm like, "If you're my mother, then what's my name?" And she said, "My name, Rivky." I said, "Okay, well, if you're my mother, then, what's all my siblings' name?" And she said, "All my siblings' names." And to me, you know, I felt in my heart that connection with her.
The idea that you were sitting on your mom's lap and you didn't even know this is your mom.
Correct.
That's an awful lot to go through. Where were your other siblings at this point?
I honestly, they were in other foster homes. We were all divided up and put in different foster homes. So I really couldn't say. I don't really know.
Now, did you all come back together?
There was a point that we were all brought back to the home with my parents. Not everybody came back. And then there were just periods of time that, numerous siblings sort of went to different foster homes because, the home life was just so unsafe.
And then one day you're back with your parents and your father, for whatever reason, became enraged and he smashes you over the head with a cup, right?
Actually, he was just singing, and out of nowhere, he just raged off and just took a cup and just smashed it over my head. I remember taking my hand and kind of like putting it on my head because it hurt, but I didn't want him to know that it hurt. It was like he hurt me, but I still wanted to protect him. And I took my hand down and I looked at it and I saw blood all over my hand. And I realized that I had blood dripping down all from my head. So I ran into my parents' bedroom where my mother was sleeping. And I quickly just put my head on her shirt, like almost to just get the blood on her too, so I wouldn't be the only one bleeding. I was just terrified. She saw it. She did not freak out. She took me to the bathroom, put pressure on it, got me ice, stopped the bleeding, and just kind of relaxed me. And then my father came into the room where my mom was just kind of like consoling me.
Mm-hmm.
And he came in like he's a victim, like, "Oh, like, I didn't mean that, right? I love you." And at that time, as a child, I actually felt bad for my father, and I said, like, of course I know you love me. Like, almost like I had to, console him, like, of course I love you. It's okay. It's like nothing happened, and then would just then, and my mom would say, that was not okay. What you did is totally unacceptable. And he would just then start disparaging my mother.
Well, what at this time was your school life like? Do you remember? Did you have some good teachers? Did you have people who cared for you in school?
I didn't really get personal in school. I really just kind of, tried my best, made sure to, pass everything. I did okay. I was average. Um, I mean, school was just, I kind of made sure I'd always get up really early, leave super early to school, kind of just get out of the house. And I'd be at like the school building and just walk around it until they opened, and then I just did my best in school, and that was kind of that.
What was there? And my question really, Rivky, is were there any people in your life outside of your family that picked up on your father's abusive nature, or what was going on at home?
Oh no. I mean, he was so excellent at manipulating people. I mean, even in the community, I would get phone calls saying, things like, you should be better to your father. You have to treat him better.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking, you don't even know what I'm going through. I don't even know who you are, and well, he would just go around to the community disparaging, being a victim, disparaging his children, disparaging, my mother. He was always the victim, and it was like so incongruent with what was actually happening that it just felt really frustrating.
Rivky, a lot of children, the biggest challenge in their lives is this sort of cognitive dissonance. Yeah, that your parents are seeing, in this case, your father, as being an upstanding lawyer, a member of the community, and so on. And then when he's behind closed doors, he's a much different man. He's a much different human being. I went through my own struggles with my father, who was a fine rabbi and it was a wonderful leader, but he wasn't so good to me. And so I can empathize with what you were feeling. Was there sexual abuse in the house?
With my father,
Yes.
no. It was physical and a lot of psychological abuse.
Right. And at no point in time did you have anyone to speak with?
No, not that I can recall. I didn't even realize that what was being done to me was abuse, to be honest.
Right. 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 You know why that is?
I don't know.
That's the way children are. No matter how you grow up, you think, okay, that's how everybody grows up. Right.
Yes, that's an excellent point. That's quite how I thought.
Right. So you're 16 years old. You described yourself as somewhat happy-go-lucky in school, and this young girl your age comes and befriends you, right? And this is where Mr. X begins. Tell us about that, Rivky.
Yes. So I was very happy-go-lucky. I was in high school, very religious school, which I was happy about it at the time. And this girl, we'll call her Jane Doe. She befriends me. I had nothing with her prior to this. However, looking back, she had befriended me really strongly and really quickly. Her, her main idea was to constantly tell me in subtle terms how, oh, do you know Mr. X? He's such a great guy. I could really see you guys together. My response would be like, what? He's a boy. Like, why are you even talking about that?
Yes.
In the religious, community, there's something shomer nagia, where you don't even touch, a boy. And that was what I went by. You're also, I mean, I grew up, I was not aware of, sex, or even the fact that you have a hole in your vagina, those were things that I was not aware of at that time. Anyways, this girl, Jane, she befriended me, and she keeps putting in these subtleties about Mr. X. And she then says, hey, why don't we go to, so-and-so's house? Mr. X had a sister in this high school as well. So she said it in that way. So I said, okay. I was more kind of like, a follower perhaps, like, I guess whatever my friend said, okay, just happy-go-lucky, sure. So we would go to that house, and Mr. X would be there each time. I wouldn't give much notice to him because I didn't think much. I wasn't thinking along the lines of boys or anything like that. Moving forward to, months of these subtleties from this friend Jane about Mr. X and what a great guy he is, and he has money and he loves to help people. In 12th grade, she had mentioned to me like, hey, Mr. X got me, a laptop. He got me, he helped me with money. Why don't you come out to a movie with us? First of all, a movie theater was not allowed, in high school. And I wasn't interested in doing that. And I told her, I'm like, are you crazy? I'm not going out with that's a boy. We're not allowed to, That was how I felt. And she's like, no, it's no big deal. I'm going to be there. It's nothing. So I, just kind of followed her and said, okay. We went out to a movie. I have no idea what the movie was about because I remember him touching me, like just kind of putting his head on me and putting his hand on me. And I freaked out inside. I didn't say anything, but inside I felt so anxious and terrified. Finally, the movie was over, and, I just kind of didn't say anything. Subsequently, after that, Jane says to me, Mr. X really wants to help you. He knows that you were in foster care, and he wants to help you make money. He's such a great guy. He loves helping people. He has, work, and, he'll pay really well. So, I thought about it, and I didn't feel so comfortable, but you know what? She trusted him, and she kept on kind of pushing this. So, I said, okay. So she had contacted him, and he had picked me up in his car, and he took me to his work. Well, his work was in his house. Again, I felt so uncomfortable and anxious, but I didn't feel like I can say anything.
Rivky, you were 16 at that time?
By this time, I was 17.
And how old was Mr. X?
He's 8 years older, so I would say 25.
Okay.
So his work was in his house, and it was kind of like packaging things. So he would have me package some stuff. And then at the end, he gave me like $100. And to me, I was like, wow, this is a lot of money for me. All I had to do was package a few things. Like, this is amazing, So it happened like this, quite a few times until one day when I was packaging things. So the room where there was packaging things, right, there was a bathroom right next to it. And then right off the bathroom was his bedroom. I was packaging things, and all of a sudden he kind of took me. Now inside, I'm anxious because I don't touch boys, and he's touching me, but I don't feel like I can say anything.
Yes.
So he took me to his bedroom, and he laid me down, and I'm thinking, say something. Like nothing came out. And he, starts touching me by my vagina. And I say, please stop. It hurts. He's like, it doesn't hurt. I'm literally just touching it. And I said, no, it does. It hurts. He's like, it's not possible that it hurts. He then starts getting, more aggressive, and he starts, he starts holding me really strongly down, and he takes out his, penis, which I had not seen, a penis before, and I'm traumatized, and I'm like, what's happening? He had taken it out, put on a condom. Again, at that time, I didn't even know what is a condom, and he's holding me down the whole time. So he's struggling because he's doing this with one hand and holding me down with the other. And he had struggled to take my tights off because I was kicking and I was terrified. And he's struggling to get his penis into my vagina, and he's not able to. So he's getting really angry. And I was kicking and screaming at that time. And I said, please stop, please stop. And he got his penis like halfway in until he couldn't, because I kept on struggling. So he then, really frustrated, took his finger, stuck it in my vagina very angrily with a back and forth motion as I was like pleading for him to stop, until he finally felt the sense of relief, took out his finger and looked at it, and he saw that there was blood on it. I still remember the grin on his face as he looked at his finger with blood on it. Mm-hmm. I was paralyzed in fear. I mean, I don't even know if there's a word to the emotions that I felt at that time. I really felt like I just didn't really know what just happened. I felt like a rag doll at that time. I remember him holding my body, putting my tights on. I just didn't feel like I can even move. He then kind of just didn't really say anything, just took me to his car. And on the way back, driving me back, he looks at me with a grin and says, well, I guess I'm going to have to marry you now, since you're damaged goods. You're not a virgin anymore. And I remember at that time, what I felt was this extraordinary fear. Oh my gosh, he's right. Now I do have to marry him, because who's going to want me? And I was terrified to tell anyone. I was so ashamed. I blamed myself. I actually never told anyone until recently about this story, because I had so much shame and blame connected with it. And, I didn't quite even make sense of it, to be honest. It was like, I didn't even realize that I was just raped, and I, and not only that, but here I was manipulated, now this fear, thinking I'm damaged goods. And, you have to understand, in the religious world, girls, they, look forward after 12th grade, to kind of get married off and have children young, and girls who, they consider as, promiscuous or not a virgin, they are really looked down upon in, many ways, unfortunately, and so, and just for myself, I was saving myself, and that was something in my mind that was important to me, with, all of this, I had this, terrifying fear that someone would find out and that I wouldn't be able to get married. I had this terrifying fear that I had to marry this, person who just did this to me. And then at the same time, there was this matchmaker that I found out later was promised $20,000 to push this match on me, where he would literally follow me on his bicycle, harassing me, saying, you have to marry Mr. X. He's such a great guy. You know what? You think you're going to get better than him? You're lucky if you have somebody like Mr. X. All these kinds of things, So I have this trauma that's just happened to me. I'm terrified and ashamed. I'm blaming myself. And then I'm having this fear that I think that I have to marry him, because nobody will want me since I'm damaged goods. And then I am having this matchmaker running after me, harassing me, that, I'm lucky to even, have someone like him and, pushing this match, So subsequently, it did occur where there was like a 3-week quick engagement, something to that effect. And then there was a Jewish ceremony of marriage.
And you were how old, Rifki?
I think I had just about, maybe I was 18 by that time, 18 and a half, perhaps.
So, yeah, continue with your story. So you married Mr. X.
Yes. And then there was so much physical, psychological, and sexual abuse that I have endured during that time until I had gotten a PFA, an order of protection. This was in New York. I mean, there was just so much abuse to me, to my children. And you have to also, I just want to, sort of explain because, before you go to, like the outside world, like the non-Jews or police or anything like that, there's something where I was taught that you have to first ask permission from the rabbis. And so only once you got permission from the rabbis can you, get this order of protection. I, at the time, didn't even know you can, do a police report. I actually still didn't, know kind of like the system or what to do. I think like a lot of religious people don't know, what to do in these type of situations or cases. But I recall a friend telling me that there's something called an order of protection. And she explained to me kind of like where to go and how to get it. And I kind of, the first time packed my bags and, kind of went with my kids to do so.
But before we go down that road, you're young. Within the religious world, the idea is to have children very quickly and very often to have as many as you possibly can. So you're 18, 18 and a half, 19 years old. You have your child, then you have your second child. What was your life like as a mom with Mr. X as the father of these children?
It was terrifying. It was like, they say like living on eggshells all the time. I would never know when the rage would happen. I would never know when, the physical or sexual abuse would, be coming my way. It would just sort of just kind of like happen out of nowhere. And, there was so much. There was, times where, he had locked me, in a room, starved me. There was so much like psychological abuse to me, and to my children. Just so much physical abuse to me. I mean, my mindset was survive, 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 protect the kids, survive, 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 protect the kids, try to anticipate the abuse, survive, 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 protect the kids. That's kind of like my mindset. You don't really get to think, of much else.
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of in like that survival.
You talked about how he would drag you by the hair or how he would push you against the wall, right? And was there nobody at all at that time, within the first few years of your marriage, who was there who recognized the abuse? Were there any wounds that you suffered?
It was such a long time ago, but it's like everyone kind of knew of him because such a person, you can't really hide everything.
Yeah.
However, he put on such an excellent facade of being the nicest guy and doing favors, for community and everyone. And it would be, such, like a different, situation to me and my kids behind closed doors. However, I mean, people know of his actions because, he is not, what person can't put on the facade, forever. And people know of it, sure. However, people, sometimes just like to, just be silently complicit and just kind of pretend they didn't see or that pretend they don't know because it's easier. They want to go on with their lives, or maybe they just didn't want to get involved because they're scared of him, or maybe they were manipulated by him, and truly believed his manipulations, of, disparaging me, that I'm crazy, and I'm BPD. He always called me BPD. Um,
That
so
that stands for.
borderline personality disorder.
Okay.
And he specifically used that term because he had, learned that under BPD that this is what he told me. Oh, you're BPD, and people who are BPD are suicidal, and you're suicidal, and you need help. Uh, those are the things that he would tell me.
What was your mother there in those years? Did she know what was?
In the first few years, I mean, and the those years prior to the first PFA, I didn't really have much involvement with anyone. He kind of like ostracized me from everyone. We even lived in a
Right.
place kind of like away from everyone as well. And he monitored who I can and can't speak with, the conversations that I can and can't have. So everything was really, really monitored, really controlled.
All right. So you have your two kids. Um, did you have good memories of the early years of motherhood?
You know, the only positive times in my life were just literally just when I was just with my kids.
Yes. Yes.
Even though being with my kids, I always had that extra anxiety and fear, because, what am I going to expect in 2 minutes from now? What am I going to expect? What's going to happen? What is he going to do to me? What is he going to do to my kids? So it's like you want to just enjoy them because you just love them so much. And you also look at them like, you want a better life for them. How do I
Mhm.
get out of this? How do I get my kids out of this? How do I save them? There's just so many thoughts that go through, your minds. And again, I was 20, I believe, when I had both of my kids, dealing with all of this.
Right. And then things got so bad in a couple of years after you had your kids. You just intuitively knew, like, I can't do this anymore. And you started to pack up, right?
Yeah, well, there was a lot happening, a lot of abuse, the escalation of the abuse, and there was a particular incident which I will not get into, with my child. That will be when my child, is old enough and decides, they want to, share their story. That will be that. But it was quite an incident, and that was it for me. And I called people, again, terrified to call people because he monitored my phone, but I just quickly called and asked, help me. How do I get out of here? What do I do? And that was when this order of protection idea was explained to me, and I was directed accordingly.
So, what happens when you decide, okay, I'm going to escape this? I can't do this anymore. I don't want this for my kids. You're young. You're so young, but yet you have to be creative and figure this out. So, what was your plan?
So I called up this foster family that I had known, and I had asked, please, can I, stay by you, with my kids, they agreed. I had also had to ask a rabbi if it was okay for me to get this order of protection, which it was okayed by the rabbi. And so I packed some stuff, secretly, and I kind of, just that one day that I had just taken my stuff and my kids, and I went to the court, where I was directed. And I didn't really understand the process, but, I guess I learned as I was going along. And I was told to tell, some of the, things, and I did. And I got an order of protection. And then what came from that was, kind of like years of court, as well as numerous violations of the order of protection as well. And
He actually showed up at your place one night, didn't he?
correct. There were numerous times where there was, the harassment, numerous violations of the order of protection, um, you know, and each time I would have to, get, permission from the rabbi, you violated the order of protection. Is it okay, to go to the police? I mean, this was how I was conditioned to think.
Yes, yes. I think what was incredible, along with your plan to leave, of which you, excuse me, of which you actualized, that there came a time where you thought a really, really good idea to protect yourself and to protect your children would be to go public.
Yes. So it was brought to my attention by numerous people. I actually did not want to. I was terrified. I just wanted to live in peace with my kids, just privately, quietly. It didn't seem like I was going to be able to move on from this. From the constant harassment, from also he was refusing to give me a get, which is a Jewish divorce. Which means that I, as a woman, cannot date, remarry, or have any more children.
Which
and
you still do not have today.
Correct. He's still refusing that as well. Correct. So, again, I am like, 21, 22, maybe at the time, and, you're thinking you have no future, going forward, without this get, you're kind of almost made to feel like you're worthless, and that this person holds this total like kind of control over your life. You don't have that, that freedom, so there were various aspects that were kind of like playing a role, in me going public at the time. It wasn't something that I really wanted. I just felt like, where do I go from here? I need help. I need people, I need more people to just kind of help me. I can't do this alone.
So at some point, you approached a mutual friend of ours, and that person helped you, what we'll call, go public. And when I reviewed, and this was way back in 2015, and when I reviewed what that meant going public, I saw articles on your situation on NBC, CBS, The Forward, and many, many major Jewish and non-Jewish outlets. So you did this incredible job of getting the word out there, but then things changed. You went silent. Why was that?
Well, towards kind of like the ending of the court where we were in trial, it was winding down. Excuse me. I noticed Mr. X's car, following me, a few days in a row. But I just kind of pushed it off like, you know what? It's probably just a coincidence. Maybe he's just driving in this, in this area, has business, because again, it's quite burdensome to have to call a rabbi, get permission, then, go to the order of protection. I'm sorry, then to go to, to the police station. It's like the whole thing is so anxiety producing. You just kind of want to feel like, okay, it's okay. Nothing's happening. You're totally fine. Subsequent to that, Mr. X had followed me into my apartment. And I remember turning around because I'd closed the door, but I didn't hear it close shut. So I remember turning around. It felt like slow motion as I turned around and I saw Mr. X standing there. The only thought that went through my mind is like, how is he here? And he was very calm and cool, with again his grin on his face, saying to me, do you see any order protections protecting you now? Do you see any police around to protect you? And he continued on and said, I can kill you and make it look like a suicide. I My heart dropped into my stomach. And he said, this was his famous line. We can do this. You can do this the easy way or the hard way. But we both know at the end, I'm going to win. So you can either come back to me the easy way or you can do it the hard way. The only thoughts that were going through my mind were like, okay, so if I don't go back and he kills me, then my kids don't have a mother at all. But if I go back and he doesn't kill me, then at least my kids have a mother, some semblance of a mother. So, it was kind of like, I didn't feel like I really had a choice, but that was kind of like the, scenario going through my mind at the time. Shortly after that, I had woken up totally not dressed, totally naked. And Mr. X was grinning, standing over me. I was in bed. And he shows me his phone and he shows me a picture of me naked and in such a compromising position. And he said again with a grin on his face, sorry, it's just a lot.
Oh, take your time.
And he said to me with a grin on his face, with just a touch of a button, I could send this off to the entire internet. So if you step out of line, all I have to do is press this button. He was referring to ensuring that I go with him to the court to let them know that there was a reconciliation. And he wanted me to ensure that I not lead them on that it's under duress. I complied at the time. Honestly, I was in a daze of trauma. I can't even recall any of the questions that were asked of me in court. I was just, thinking like, just somebody in the court, can you please read my thoughts? Please, I'm in danger. Please, please look through what I'm saying and just read my thoughts, just know what happened, that's kind of how I felt, that was kind of that. And, and I was forced back to him and so much abuse later, I mean, to me and to my children, and then recently, the papers came out with, these, charges, these alleged charges that Mr. X was, doing that, I had actually no idea about it. Like the people, I guess that were pursuing this investigation had come to me at work to ask me questions. And, when they were asking me these questions, I was like, what? Like, I didn't understand what they were even talking about. But I also knew that I would have to, give this rundown to Mr. X because I had to give a rundown about my day, anyone who spoke to me, anyone who I spoke to. So when I did go back to Mr. X and I told him, I'm like, what's going on? Like, he grabbed me by my hair and my neck, dragged me down to the basement, and in like a screaming whisper, threatened my life and said, if you dare speak to anyone about any of these charges, any of these things that I, I would have to just read it off of, the charges on the paper that I received from, I believe, the federal government on, the things that, Mr. X did. And he said, if you speak to anyone, I'm going to kill you, and I'm going to take the kids to another country, and you'll never see them again. It didn't even, both of them, he was just going on and on. He was like ranting, and I was terrified because I didn't even know what was happening. Like, I didn't even know at the times that things were actually done on my name and my social without my knowledge, authorization, or permission. I didn't even understand, to the degree of what all was going on, Then, recently.
I just want to give a little context here. 2015 again. That's when you went back to him under duress. You did have 2 more children together. I just want to read a piece from the Times of Israel, which states Rivky Stein, a young New York Jewish woman who launched the social media campaign, and this was the first time you left, to attain a religious divorce, broke down in court on Wednesday as she described in chilling details her husband's alleged actions throughout the years of marriage. And then speaking at this particular court, at that time, you claimed that your estranged husband, Mr. X, had subjected you to beatings as well as physical and verbal and sexual abuse. And you, whenever I refused anything from Mr. X, he raped me, verbally abused me, and threatened me. He threatened to take my kids away. I didn't agree to go to another country. He held my son against my will, and he said if I ever want to see him again, I should do as he says. Now, the phenomenal thing about all of this and the abuse that you went through and the fear was somewhere in there, Rivky, with your inimitable spirit, your ability to keep going. You became a nurse.
So that was kind of like a do or die. When I was the first time when I had left, I had been working a couple of jobs and to make ends meet. I did not have any education college-wise, and the people that I had worked with, were in the community. And what Mr. X would do would be he would harass my bosses until they couldn't take it anymore, and they would say, "I'm so sorry," and they would let me go, and I would be without a job. So this time, when I was forced back, I swore to myself that I would somehow, some way, get some sort of job that that he can't take away from me. It would have to be something that would not force me to work in the community, the Jewish community. So when I was moved to Pennsylvania, there were nursing schools here, there were hospitals, and prior to applying to nursing school, I first got myself a therapist. And I told her, about the abuse. And I said, listen to me, I have to get out of here. And, I also know that I need to have, the ability to support, my children, myself, getting out of this. And I'm going to attempt nursing school. And please, whatever happens, please don't let me give up on this nursing school, because there would be a lot of, I knew there'd be a lot of psychological abuse, and things like that. When I did get into, the nursing school, there was a lot of, disparaging me from Mr. X, that, first, I was too stupid to ever do college. And, then it would be, you'll never make it through nursing school. And in a way, I guess it was a good thing he thought like that of me, because it didn't threaten him, I guess, because, he could have, looking back, he could have done a lot more abuse that he was used to doing to me. to not allow me to go to this nursing school, so I was quite surprised, that to me was like divine intervention. I pushed myself through nursing school. I think it was actually like my first experience where I was with people who were not Jewish, going through school, college. And I really I remember the experience. I think anyone at my nursing school could probably tell you that it was like a do or die. I was so anxious. I was like, I had to pass. I would study for hours, be, experiencing this abuse, taking care of my kids. I mean, looking back, I don't even know how I passed, but I did. Thank goodness.
Good for you.
That was my saving grace,
Your mom was a nurse, right?
Yes, my mother being a nurse is what kind of, pushed me in my mind to say, well, if your mother could do it, then maybe you can too, like that kind of gave me that, because I was so, I was constantly being told that I'm too stupid and I'm not good enough and I would never pass and, all these kind of things, which you do believe to a certain point when you're being told this so often, and so I said, well, okay, wait, my mother did it. So maybe I can try,
Right.
And, and I'm so grateful. I am so grateful for, having, that license, that is what has helped me, I tried numerous, unsuccessful attempts to, to flee with my kids, until, this most recent attempt, where, I had ended up in the hospital 3 times with a very short, time period, because of all the abuse that I was enduring. It was after I had just had a baby, and Mr. X forced me to go back to work after 3 weeks, through various different ways, psychological abuse, and all types of abuse. He would say things like, you should depend on me more. You should take a shift, a 3 a.m. shift, and depend on me because you should know that you should know that you should depend on your husband. I didn't quite understand it because I was not always following his psychological abuse. So then my 3 a.m. shift would come, right? But prior to that, he would wake me up at like 1 o'clock and be like, you're not going to do your walking, because I would do some walking in the house, as exercise. And he's like, you're not going to do your walking? You're going to be lazy? I mean, you still have a baby stomach. I mean, am I supposed to be attracted to that? So just so that there wouldn't be a fight or anything, I'd get up at 1, do my walking, exhausted. And then I would want to go out to the 3 a.m. shift. It was the baby. So I said, okay, here's the baby. I'm going to the 3 a.m. shift that you wanted me to go to. He ignores, doesn't take the baby. And I say, okay, are you going to take the baby? And he starts screaming, who do you think you are? You're abandoning your children, running out to work, giving me the baby, waking me up when I'm working so hard? Who do you think you are? And then he would wake up my daughter and say, look what your mother's doing. You're going to watch the baby because she wants to go out to work. So here, and he would give the baby to my daughter. And I would, I'd have to run to work because, the more I'm going to tell them I'm coming for a shift and then, just not show up, that would just, they would be more inclined to want to, get rid of you if this is going to be, the way you'll go about things, right? They're not going to, rely on you, which is exactly what he had wanted. Like, that's kind of like a bit of a psychological abuse that I would endure.
Rivky, tell us about the time most recently when you escaped.
Yeah. So I was subpoenaed by, I got a subpoena for these, charges that were brought, federally on, Mr. X. And And of course, I had to make Mr. X aware. And he said to me, Mr. X said to me, you know what? I'm going to call my lawyer and I'm going to get all the questions and I'm going to tell you exactly how you're going to answer it. And I said, I'm just going to say the truth. He said, you're going to say exactly what I'm going to tell you. And he then again, of course, he threatened my life, threatened he'll take the kids to another country and I'll never see them again if I don't comply with what he is saying. You know, that was, quite the moments that I was like, you know, and numerous other things that, my daughter had opened up to me at the time too, again, and I called my mom to find out for me, what is the court, how do I get a PFA? Because I was scared to do it on my phone because he had my phone and his phone connected. And I had my mother kind of look up, the information, give it to me, so that I can, take my kids and, get this, order of protection, excuse me, and get this order of protection. I also do want to note that, leading up to me getting subpoenaed and, I guess this federal case, coming closer, the abuse really did escalate. There was a time that he had taken an entire couch, me and my son Daniel, and I was holding the baby. We were on the steps, and he took this entire couch, just like started raging, and he threw it at us. I took my body and kind of like, put it over my baby and my Daniel.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he had missed by inches. Seeing that he missed, he then continued with 2 more pieces of furniture, throwing it at us. I saw my Daniel ran to a room, terrified, and I ran to try to console him. And Mr. X just said to him, "Nothing happened, right? Nothing happened." It's it, and I did actually, I videoed, some abuse, and I had showed it to my therapist at the time, and I told her, quickly look, be a witness to it because I have to erase it because he gets my videos and pictures from my phone. But I just want you to know so that this happened. So I did that, and I had quickly erased it.
So how long have you been away from him?
I got the order of protection in about September.
Okay.
Of
And,
2024.
and how has your life been since then?
So since then, I have been getting harassed and intimidated by Mr. X. In fact, there was recently a hearing in federal court. There was a motion put in to revoke his, to my understanding, allegedly, I guess I have to say that word, I don't know, basically to keep him in jail until his sentencing, because of this intimidation and threats. Numerous text messages, sending my oldest son, to threaten me, through him. I would get, calls from my oldest son, or he would come to me, my oldest son, and he would say to me, Tati, which is Yiddish for dad, said that we're going to bury you, and that he said I can talk against you in court, and he said, he said he's never going to give you a get. So what's going to be your end game? You'll never be able to get remarried or have kids. And Tati said that you're just going to end up on drugs and committing suicide. Those were the words that came out of my son in lieu of his father. And
Are you in a constant state of fear because of this?
oh, absolutely. There's a court app that It's supposed to be just about, the scheduling of the children. And I mean, I'm just constantly being, harassed, manipulated, threatened, intimidated, love bombed, on this app, you know, and it's just constant. And, I had gone to the rabbis here, people of the community, for some semblance of help, and phrases that numerous different rabbis had told me, and I just want to read it off. Was when I was crying about the abuse that Mr. X did to me and to my children. I was told, stop getting hysterical. This is just what happens to women. No one will believe you. Just don't talk lashon hara, which means like evil speech, on the rabbi. And whatever you think you and your children experience, don't go to the non-Jews because it's much worse by them. Uh, and I was also told, don't do anything, just pray. I was also told another line, you're a fool if you think you can do this alone. As well as another rabbi saying, when I told him of the abuse, he says to me, well, it's a he said, she said. I can't get involved. I'm just a paupered rabbi. Now, what was interesting was that there was a hearing at about April 4th, federal court hearing. And it was actually brought because, to my understanding, like I said, there was a motion to kind of keep Mr. X in jail until sentencing because of all these, intimidations, threats, harassment. And I am a victim, and to my knowledge, a victim and a witness in this, case. And so they, like a little bit after this motion was put in, I got a text from Mr. X. I think I have it here, where he wrote to me, God bless you. You're smart and have 4 wonderful kids, a husband who loves you, even after all the stories you keep making up. God is watching you. Remember what happened to your brother Ezra when he made a Chilul Hashem, a desecration of God's name, and he helped me go public with my story. Whatever you try making up false statements, he is watching you. Please stop. Do it for our kids. Your desire for control is getting to your head. Why do you think you can rob our kids from the love they need from their father? I will always love you unconditionally. So that was what I got, just a bit after this motion was put in. This was read, in court. However, I get a call that it's a public hearing and that I can come. So I run to this hearing, and lo and behold, I was shocked. The rabbis and people of the community that I had gone to crying for help were there in support of Mr. X, the perpetrator. And instead of, thinking, hey, let's support the victim in this. Let's keep her safe. They were there to support the perpetrator.
Which is phenomenal, isn't it?
It was beyond. I actually confronted some of them because I was just shocked. I mean, I was traumatized, and I said, on what level were you, supporting him? Were you supporting, the federal crimes? Were you supporting the fact that he's not giving me a get? Are you supporting the fact that he's harassing and intimidating me? Are you supporting the fact that hasn't paid his court-ordered child support? He's backed up in that thousands of dollars while you watch him live this lavish lifestyle in his mansion. I mean, what part were you, supporting, and as well as, when I came to you about all this abuse and all of these, factors, and I'm just trying to put food on the table for my kids and going through all of this, I was told, by you that you can't get involved. It's a he said, she said. You're just a puppet rabbi. Yet there they were, at this federal hearing, involving themselves to support the perpetrator.
Rifki, you know that in the United States, there are approximately 1 in 5 women have been raped in their lifetime. Among these, nearly half were assaulted by an acquaintance, and about 45% were raped by an intimate partner. Nearly 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men experience severe intimate partner physical violence, sexual violence, or stalking with impacts such as injury, fearfulness, post traumatic stress disorder, use of victim services, contraction of sexually transmitted diseases. There are a lot of very harrowing, very difficult statistics out there like these, both in the United States and also here in Canada, where I live. I'd like you to explain to us now, at 35 years old, a nurse, a mother of four, a couple of the kids who are old enough now to make their own decisions, what your goals are in terms of this interview today and moving forward. And perhaps you can include in that the launch of a GoFundMe campaign.
Yes, thank you. Well, for me, my goals, moving forward are, I have a few. First, I want to reach out to other victims of Mr. X. I know who you are. I know at least a few of you, if not more. I know specifically Jane, who I had mentioned. She had begged me not to subpoena her to court because she just wanted to put it all behind her, as she was also a victim of Mr. X, as she had told me her story. And I know other victims of Mr. X as well, sexual assault victims, financial victims. I had watched, some of them have, nervous breakdowns as a result, and they would tell me their stories. And they just didn't feel like they have a voice or that anything would happen. They also felt that they wouldn't be, credible.
Mhm.
They also didn't really know how to move forward in it or what they can do, and a lot of them just kind of wanted to just, as they say, move on with their life and just kind of pretend like it never happened. But as a victim of all of this abuse, I've pushed down these experiences so deep, especially the one that I shared with you about the beginning. I pushed that down so deep. I just wanted to pretend like it never happened, thinking that it would just go away. But it doesn't. Just you live in this extraordinary pain. Like the bad days are so challenging. The feelings of despair, helplessness, powerlessness, you know, blaming yourself, shame, the shame that's involved. I want other victims to know that you're not alone, unfortunately. And I see you. I see your pain. I see your daily struggle just to go to work, just to get up, the flashbacks, the anxiety, the depression. I see you. And everyone's experience is unique to them. I do urge victims of Mr. X to come forward. If there was ever a better time, it would be now, as they're doing, to my knowledge, a background of him, which is going to weigh in on sentencing. And so if anyone was a victim of him, financial or sexual assault victim, physical abuse victim, psychological abuse victim, to please come forward. Please, please stand with me.
And we should clarify that the court cases of which you speak of are having to do with business. But
Federal, that's correct.
right, right. And as far as sexual abuse, that is only being launched now. As I said before, you've gone public, and this is the really first podcast or interview that you are doing in order to get your message out there. And like I said before, kol hakavod to you for your bravery and for your courage. I'd like to add that here in Canada, that if women are going through sexual abuse, you can be in touch with Canadian Women's Foundation at 1-866-293-4483. While they don't offer direct services, they provide a comprehensive list of resources and support services across Canada. There are women's shelters across Canada. One is at 613-680-5119. Here in Toronto, there's the North York Women's Shelter at 416-638-7335. There are a whole plethora of opportunities or places for people to go who have been sexually abused. And we here today encourage you to be in touch with them, to get help, reach out, and to use the resources that are available. Rivky, in conclusion, I would just simply like to say that I'm very honored that you're coming out for a second time on my podcast, and that we're able to get a very important message out there. And I think it's important what you said before, that you know who these women are who have been sexually abused by Mr. X, and you're there for them. And as we stated before, you've launched a GoFundMe campaign, and the GoFundMe campaign is at the bottom of your screen. And if people would like to contribute, the funds will be used towards paying legal bills, towards fighting Mr. X and what he has done, and just ensuring that people who have been abused should have the ability to come forth and be able to use resources that are available. Well, what would you like to add in conclusion, Rivky, about your goals here today?
My goals here today is to really reach out to, victims of, abuse. So many times, victims, they, see their abusers as they just kind of go on with their life, and the victims, who, feel that they don't have a voice. They feel like, who will believe them? As there is, unfortunately, a lot of, people who are complicit with and enable these, abusers, where the victims are, made as, they're the problem. I really, really want to reach out to victims of abuse in general. I want you to know that you're a light to the world. Please do not let this experience or experiences diminish what you are and who you are as a person. You have so much to offer yourself and others. You have so much to offer the world. And I know how challenging, sometimes minute to minute can be because of these experiences. I really want you to know, unfortunately, that you are not alone in this. I want you to know that, please, to reach out, if it's, to get a therapist, or to reach out to, a hotline. I know here in Scranton, I actually, I looked up a few. The one that I actually reached out to in Scranton was the Women's Resource Center, where the number is 570-346-4671. I also looked up, I believe it's a women's shelter called Catherine McAuley Center. It's a homeless shelter, I think. Uh, the number is 570-342-1342. I also found this a website of Friends of the Poor, where it mentioned that it's a nonprofit organization, I believe, to help those in poverty. They offer food pantry. It said water bill assistance. Their number is 570-342-1342. Um, I just want to, you know, I guess just try and give strength to, other victims of sexual abuse, any kind of abuse. Um, that this is it is a big experience, but it's not who you are. And you're so much more than this experience. And I know the daily struggles and challenges, you know, getting to, that healthy mindset, you know, um, I want you to know that you're more than those experiences. You're an incredible person with, so much to offer, so much to give to the world. And we need you. We need you. So please raise your voice with me, stand with me against abuse, and your voice matters. You matter. So please shine your light with me.
Rivky Stein, thank you so much for being my guest today
Thank
and
you
for
so
your
much.
honesty, for your authenticity. I just simply say I'm really sorry for all the things that you've gone through. It's just terrible. But I do know too that you've struggled and you've overcome a lot in terms of being a great mom and
Thank you.
becoming a nurse and being here today. So there's a saying in Yiddish, which is Yasher Koach. Well done. I'm very proud of you. And the idea that you're going public and that you're coming out with your message should be a protection for you, and you should be well, and you should take
Amen.
good care of yourself. And everybody should watch over you, right? To make sure that you and your children are healthy. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. My email is at the bottom of the screen. You can contact me anytime with questions. As mentioned before, if you would like to contribute, and we ask you to Rivky Stein's GoFundMe campaign, the address to that campaign is at the bottom of the screen, and that campaign will be going on for a while. We appreciate your help very, very much. And we wish all the women out there and all the men out there who are being abused sexually, physically, mentally, um, should be well and should do their best to get support. So until we meet again, as they say in Yiddish, sei gesund, go in good health, and we look forward to being with you very, very soon.